Hey everyone. So today I want to talk about switching to Linux. I know a lot of people are considering making the switch, especially with all the news recently from Microsoft and Adobe and so on. I don't want to get into all the drama here. I just want to talk about, how you can make it happen. And a lot of people in this scenario, they recommend Linux Mint, Ubuntu. Those are great distros, but I want to take a slightly different tack here and recommend Debian, specifically Debian 12. Now, Debian has been around for a long time, over 30 years. I think it started back in 92 or 93, and it really is the granddaddy of many common desktop Linux distros today. And I think historically, it's had some issues with accessibility, right? Which kind of spurred the creation of Ubuntu, for example, right? To make that more accessible for the average user. But I think a lot of those perceptions are really outdated, especially with Debian 12. I think Debian has reached a point where it is as accessible to most users compared as something like Ubuntu or Linux Mint, and more importantly, it gives the user more choice, right? You're not locked into a specific desktop environment, for example. You just have a lot of freedom in the software you choose to install. And really, once you get past the installation, which I'll walk you through today, step by step, it is a very easy to use distro. And it's rock steady and stable, both from a metaphorical perspective, right? It's been around for more than 30 years, as well as from a technical perspective, right? It's reliable, it's community run, it doesn't kind of shift with the politics of the Linux space. It just kind of does its thing and does it well. So let's get started. So if you're a Windows user, I've gone ahead and set up a VM to kind of walk you through this process. So just make sure you have a USB stick ready, a trusty USB drive here, flash drive, and let's get started. So if you're on Windows, just go ahead and open up your browser of choice. I just have Edge here. You'll see I'm presented with many ads and a bit of a toxic newsfeed as soon as I open it. That's one reason I do not like this operating system. But what we need to do is we need to go ahead and install Balena Etcher, which is a USB flashing utility. So just go here, etcher.balena.io. Go ahead and download it. Make sure you grab the Windows version at the top here. Download. Just bear with me for a second here. Okay, so once that's finished, just go ahead and open it. We'll open our downloads folder and we will start the install. So while that's spinning, all right, so once it's installed, it will go ahead and kind of open itself. Let's just get this out of the way, So with Balena Etcher, what you need to do is you need to get an ISO file from your distribution of choice, and you need to go ahead and plug in your flash drive. So let's do the first part, right? Let's go to debian.org. And right here on the right side, you'll see a download button. You'll notice the Debian website does look a little old-fashioned, but hey, I think they have better things to do. And it's pretty functional. So go ahead and download that. It comes in at under a gig, so it's one of the smaller and leaner ISOs because it is a net install. Okay, so once that finishes, it's all done. It's in my downloads folder. Let's jump back over to Balena Etcher, and we can then select that file here. So we'll choose Debian 12, 12.5. And then when you've plugged in your USB drive, it should appear here. You can click select target, select it. I'm on a virtual machine, so I can't actually do that right now. And then you'll just make sure it's your USB drive, and then just click flash. It'll do its thing. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Once that's done, go ahead and shut down your Windows machine, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, once you've shut down your Windows machine, what you'll need to do is turn the computer back on, and before it boots into Windows, just pay attention to the screen. You should see a bit of a kind of like a BIOS splash screen. And near the bottom, you'll find some text telling you that you can press a certain key to get into the configuration screen or BIOS setup. Really, the verbiage differs based on your motherboard, but just Mash that key, whatever the key is. It could be delete, it could be F12, F2, it really varies. But just keep mashing it. You know, as soon as you turn the computer on, just keep mashing that key. And eventually it'll bring you into the BIOS setup screen. And then from there, again, that looks different depending on your motherboard and your BIOS version. You'll want to look for a boot section. Usually it's far to the right. Go in there and change the boot order to list your USB drive as the first option. And then go ahead and save and exit. And then the computer should reboot. And it should boot you right into that USB drive. And then we'll take it from there. All right, so let's get started with the actual Debian 12 install. So once you've kind of gone through the BIOS section and booted from that USB drive, you'll see this menu here. So this is the Debian 12 initialization screen. And what we want to do is choose the graphical install. It's a little bit more user-friendly. So we'll go ahead and press enter on that. It will initialize. And this whole process is very convenient. It's quick, it's snappy. It takes way less time than installing something like Windows from scratch. So go ahead and choose your language. I'll go with English. My location, United States. Keyboard layout, American English. But you know, choose whatever works for you. It's going to go ahead and spin up and load a few components here. While it's doing that, we'll just hang tight. I'm using a wired internet connection. So it's going to go ahead and auto connect for me. But if you're using Wi-Fi, this would be the point where you kind of connect to your network. It's a very similar UI to what you've used pretty much anywhere else to connect to a Wi-Fi network, right? Just choose the right network, put your passcode in, and then just kind of proceed through that. Now here I can choose my host name. I'll go ahead and leave it as the default, but really just choose anything you want. Actually, you know what? Let's go with like a Lord of the Rings reference. We'll go as Gileath. Domain name, again, you can actually leave this blank, but I always like to kind of play around with this stuff, so maybe I'll do arda.org. Okay, so at this point, I think this trips up some users. The idea of creating a root user might be confusing, especially if you're coming from Windows. You can actually just leave this blank. And this is what a lot of distros will do by default. They'll kind of disable the root user and just allow you to create your own user account that has administrator privileges in Windows terms. So we can create a root user. I usually do. But for the purpose of simplicity, let's just leave it blank. For most people, just leaving this blank is the way to go. So if I don't input a root password, it's just going to disable the root user. I press continue, and now I can actually create my normal user account, right? So I'll go with Andrew. My username will be Andrew lowercase, and then I can choose my password. So I'll just do something really simple for the purposes of this demo. And then I'll just go ahead and confirm that. Okay, so now I'll choose my time zone. And here we go. This is where we actually start writing files to disk. So just to guide you through this, the easiest selection here is guided, use entire disk. It's the top setting, the default setting. This will use your entire drive wherever we install it, and that's usually what you want to do. So we'll go with that. I only have one drive listed here. You might have multiple. Just make sure you pick the right one, right? It's usually easy to identify by the size, right? If you have, let's say you have a 1 terabyte SSD, for example, it should be very easy for you to determine which one that is. So go ahead and select that one. I'll choose mine. I'm on a virtual machine, so I just have this block device. Go through there. And then this part can kind of confuse people as well. It's really quite simple. We don't need a separate home partition. We don't need this one at the bottom. Those things are for more advanced users. They do have some pros, but they also have some cons. So I think for most users, this top option here, you see it's recommended for new users, all files in one partition. It won't hurt anything. It's a perfect config. It just works. All right. So now we just need to confirm what we've done. We see it's automatically, not to get into too much into the weeds here, but for those who are interested, right, it shows you kind of the partitions it's generated and everything. But for our purposes, we'll just go ahead and accept that. And then one last confirmation, just press yes. We're just saying, hey, we want to go ahead and write these changes. It will overwrite any data you have on that disk. So make sure this is something that you really want to commit to. We'll press yes. And then it will go ahead and do its thing. So we'll just wait for that install. Like I said, it will actually be pretty fast. All right, so that part finished. Now this is really Debian kind of living up to its free software principles here. Oh, I'm sorry. Shit. So for this one, we'll just go ahead and choose no. We don't want to scan for additional media. Now we'll choose United States. Well, choose your location, right? This is for the package manager. You can think of that as like the App Store, right? This is, it's important to choose the right region because your speeds will be better. So I chose United States. I always stick with the default deb.debian.org. Continue. You can leave this proxy blank. That's not something we need to worry about. Okay, so now we're done with all that. This is where Debian really kind of sticks to its guns as it relates to just being committed to free software and respecting the user. They're asking us, and you'll notice the default is no, right? The default is an opt-out. They're asking us if we want to participate in a package survey, which basically just kind of tells them, gives them an idea of what software packages are the most popular amongst Debian users. So you can press no if you don't want to give them that information. I tend to kind of do them a favor. I like to support them in their development. But if you're concerned or curious, you can actually go to this URL here and you can see exactly the information they collect down to the actual like schema of that information. So very awesome that they do that. So I'll go ahead and continue. Okay, so here we go. So now, and this is why I really recommend Debian, especially Debian 12, even to new users, is because you can really build any system you want, and it's pretty easy, as you've seen so far, to do it, right? And especially for desktop Linux, more than the distro, what really determines your user experience is the desktop environment. So you can think of the desktop environment as the graphical user interface if you're not familiar with this. And the two biggest ones in the Linux space are GNOME. No, it looks like GNOME, but it's actually pronounced GNOME, as well as KDE Plasma here. So there's many others that have specific use cases, some of which are quite good actually, but these are the two biggest, GNOME and KDE Plasma. Now, GNOME offers a kind of like a Mac OS X-like experience. It's very, very flashy, modern, very streamlined. It's really geared towards doing one thing at once and being able to kind of switch between your various workspaces with gestures. So I think it works really well from a laptop, using it from a laptop perspective, right, with the finger gestures and all that. It's really sleek in that kind of use case. It works very well in the desktop too. One thing it does extremely well is it really kind of enforces a common UX, user experience, and design look and feel across all of its applications. So if you want something that looks very modern and feels very modern, it's slick and really refined, GNOME is where you want to go. But if you're coming from Windows, I actually think you should go with KDE Plasma. Now, this is also a very popular desktop environment. In fact, if you have a Steam Deck, this is what Valve chose for the Steam Deck's desktop mode. And it is very Windows-like. It has a start menu. You can press the Windows key, which is called Super, to do exactly what you do on Windows. You can Alt-Tab. All these very common design patterns from Windows, KDE Plasma shares those. So it's kind of like a traditional desktop paradigm, if you will. And on top of that, though, it gives you like pretty much infinite customization. So it's much more customizable than Windows, which is why I like it. And I use Windows for a long time, so it's just more comfortable to me. But if we want to choose that one, what we'll need to do is uncheck Debian desktop environment here, as well as GNOME up here. So uncheck those, check KDE Plasma, and the only things we should have checked here would be KDE Plasma and standard system utilities. And then if we press continue, we'll have a clean KDE Plasma install and we'll be ready to go. But as you can see, I can choose one or more of these if I wanted. I can install all of them. I wouldn't recommend that, but Debian gives you the choice, which is awesome. Okay, so when the installation is complete, you'll see this screen. And what you want to do here is go ahead and remove the USB drive and then press continue. And what it will do is go ahead and reboot, and then you'll be put right back into the system. Okay, so up to this point, I've done everything in a virtual machine. But now I'm actually going to switch over to my real Debian install on bare metal, which I just, it's fresh. I just switched over from GNOME to KDE. And what I'll do is I'll walk you through kind of the initial steps to take to just get the desktop ready for use. And don't worry, we'll be doing everything so that you can use the terminal as little as possible. In fact, aside from one small portion in the terminal, you can use this OS entirely from the graphical user interface. All right, everyone, here we are. I'm back again. I went ahead and just followed that same procedure, installed Debian 12 fresh on my desktop with a KDE installation, and now I've logged in. So you should be right here looking at the same screen. The first thing I usually like to do is kind of change my theme. I prefer dark mode, but you also might want to take a look at your display settings. So just like on Windows, you can right click your desktop, you can change your wallpaper, things like that. But right now we'll go ahead and configure our display settings. And this is where you change things like screen resolution, scaling, things like that. Right, so I have two monitors here, also a third because I'm using OBS to kind of record this, but you'll see whatever your current monitor setup is here. So just make sure that you're at the right display resolution. I'm at 1440p. And then what I like to do, I think by default, is they start you with 125% scaling. I like to just put that at 100%. I prefer it to kind of look one-to-one. And then just go ahead and apply that. I've already done it here. You also have plenty of awesome convenient options like night color. I know that's popular, or kind of a blue light filter that can turn on at a specific time. But otherwise, we've done that. One other thing that we might want to do is change the theme. So let's go over here in our start menu. So just like with Windows, we have a start menu on the left side. Click that. We also have a search box. We can browse through applications. Notice how there are no ads here, right? It's an ad-free experience. So let me go ahead and search for themes. Everything is very discoverable, very Windows-like experience, pretty easy to use. So global theme, we'll click that. I like Breeze Dark, but there's like thousands of themes you can go out and download and install right from this menu. I just like a simple dark mode. We'll go ahead and apply that. So now we're cooking. Now it looks good. It's not blinding me anymore. Okay, the first thing I like to do when I install Debian Fresh is install Flatpak. And really, this will be the extent of what we do today. Once we install Flatpak together here, you can just run off and use this distro for your everyday tasks. It'll be seamless, performant, and reliable. But a lot of people, when it comes to Debian, they say that its packages, the application software that it offers by default can be outdated, especially between, after a year or so has passed after an initial release, because Debian's release cycle is every 2 years. So this is true to some extent, but for the most part, that's a good thing. And we can actually mitigate that by installing what's known as Flatpak. And Flatpak is it's a very popular way to distribute Linux apps. It's kind of distro agnostic. You can use it anywhere. And it's a great way to install applications. So any kind of app, from something like Blender to LibreOffice to even something like Zoom, there's proprietary software as well. And these versions are generally updated. They're easy to install. And you can do it all from a graphical interface. Like I said, we won't be doing much with the terminal today. What I want to show you here is how easy Linux is to use. Even something like Debian is just very easy to use in 2024 with a graphical interface. So we do have to dip into the terminal just for 1 second, and I'll walk you through it, so just really don't worry. But after that, it's literally just plug and play, GUI based, and it's excellent. So what we'll do is we'll go to flathub.org. And FlatHub is kind of the official repository for Flatpak apps. And it's great. It's a modern UI. You can kind of browse through it, see what's available. But what we want to do is we actually want to set up FlatHub. So I'll go here, set up FlatHub on the front page. We'll choose our distribution, in our case Debian. And all we need to do is copy these commands and run them. So the first thing we need to do is install Flatpak. So if I just click copy here, and then I open my terminal, and again, we can search for that from our start menu. Terminal. It's called console by default in KDE. That's just their spin, their specific terminal application. Let's open that. Don't be scared. I'll walk you through it. Again, like I said, you never have to use the terminal again if you don't want to, although I would encourage you to learn it. It's a useful skill to have, but In 2024, you can use desktop Linux without ever really touching it. All right, so we'll go ahead and install Flatpak. Put in our password. Just like in Windows, when you do certain things like installing software, it asks you to enter your password so that it can run something with elevated permissions. So it'll ask if we want to continue. We can either type yes here, or because yes is actually capitalized, we can just hit enter and it will go ahead and accept that. Okay, so now we've installed Flatpak. The second step here is install the software Flatpak plugin. And because we're using KDE, which we installed together, we want to install this one, Plasma Discover Backend. So go ahead and copy that. Go back to our terminal and paste that in. You can click here, or you can press Control-Shift-V to use the keyboard to paste it. I'll just do this, for the sake of ease of use, for those who might not be familiar with the terminal. Again, just go ahead and press enter. It'll install that. We're good to go. And the final step here is to add the Flatpak repository. So this just allows us to hook up to this FlatHub repository so we can install apps from it in a secure way. So again, we'll go ahead and paste that in. We have to authenticate. And we are good to go. So what we'll need to do now before we can finish our setup today and before I can really show you how easy it is to install apps and get off and running with this system, just need to do a quick reboot. So let's do it. All right, I'm back, freshly restarted. So what you'll notice is in the bottom left, you've got this blue icon. This is the Discover Software Center. And this is KDE's built-in graphical interface for managing your software. Searching for software, installing new software, updating your system. You can literally do it all from here without ever touching the terminal. So we had a little brief escapade into the terminal earlier. I promise you never have to touch it again if you don't want to, but you can. It's there for you. It's your choice as a user. So this is nice. It's easy to use. We can search things, maybe Spotify. It's a popular app. Come in here. I can install it in one click. There it is. It's a proprietary app, which it lets you know, right? But it doesn't stop you from installing it. Maybe I want something a little more FOSS friendly. Just to kind of illustrate the point, I'll install something simple that's fast, just so you don't have to wait around. We'll install Color Paint. Just need to authenticate so that Discover can make changes to my system. All right, there we go. That's installing, already done. And then I can launch it. Easy as that, right? This is just a basic, this is KDE's version of Paint, right? Simple painting program. But yeah, it's really that easy to use. It's a good user experience. It's fast. It's secure. You've got everything you need now to use Debian, to use desktop Linux. Hope you enjoyed the video. You're now a Debianista. Thanks for watching. I think in the future, I'll explore how we take this baseline install and really tweak and configure it for specific use cases, like, for example, gaming or productivity or even programming. Awesome. Thanks for watching. Stay free and stay curious.